and welcome to Embracing Diabetes. Today, Amy and I have a conversation about our own personal recent challenges with diabetes, which was really fun and interesting. A couple of comments before you listen. We do talk about some issues specifically around hypoglycemia and get into some nitty-gritty. I just want to remind our listeners that this podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those questions, please contact your healthcare provider or team. Also, we recorded this earlier in the month, and unfortunately, the Diabetes Sangha course is already starting. However, I would really recommend checking out their site for other offerings, as they are an amazing resource for those affected by diabetes. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
Amy, it's so great to see you. I think what we had decided to do this week was just have a conversation that on diabetes challenges and kind of things that have come up for us recently. You do this, I don't know, every few months, I think, where you and I just talk about things. And it feels like recently, I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of challenges, and it's just helpful, I think, to vent a little bit.
Yes. And I think what some of our listeners might not remember, or if somebody's just starting the show, is that you are a professional endocrinologist. And so it's great. I don't know that I give anything back to you, but I always get so much talking to you because you know what you're talking about and you have great wealth of knowledge and experience. Yeah, I know that I feel like I'm fortunate to get to bounce questions off of you. Yeah. So I just feel like it's been a diabetes week from hell for me, or really 2 weeks. I just feel, and I'll try not to dominate the conversation, and when you get so tired, like when you get so tired or stressed that my eye keeps doing that eye twitch thing, which has nothing to do with diabetes, but I'm like, I know that's a sign from my body telling me you're overtired. But work has been super stressful, and my most recent Dexcom fell off, and I had this extra tape on it, fell off about 3 days early, which isn't a big deal, but the Dexcom before that had also fallen off a couple days early. So in total, that puts me like a week behind without being able to fill my prescription. So I've been without CGM for like almost 2 weeks. And back to the pricking my finger. And then I've been having more low blood sugars. And so the one I wanted to talk about to get to the point was a couple days ago, and Reed was with me, my 14-year-old, and I had gone to pick him up at school, and I made a to-go cup of coffee. And so I gave an extra injection of Humalog and picked him up, dropped him off at his dad's house, and then I was running errands. And I feel like I can almost always tell when a low blood sugar is coming. There are just certain signs that I can tell when it's coming. And this one really came out of nowhere. And I picked Reed back up, get in the car, and we were driving back to my house. And it was like, all of a sudden, I felt like I was seeing like those white flashes in my eyes, and I'm driving. And I could I could just feel that feeling like in my chest. And so I had to pull over to the side of the road, and I didn't want to scare Reed, but I just was sitting there eating glucose tabs, and it just felt like it was taking a while for me to come back. And it was so upsetting on so many different levels, because where I pulled the car over wasn't a very safe place to pull over. But I knew if I had kept going, we were about to get on a bridge. And I was like, I can't get on that bridge. Yeah. And Reed's sitting next to me, and I was so grateful that he just kept it cool the whole time. I said, just keep talking. And so he was rattling off. It was really adorable. He was rattling off these, did you know facts? Like, did you know that there's more penguins in blah, blah, blah? Just, I don't even remember half of what he was saying, but his voice was like keeping me calm. And I have not had a bad low like that in a while. And it was that bad where I was scared, and I was dripping with sweat. Like I said to him, I was like, look at me. My shirt was soaked all the way through. As soon as I felt better, we started driving again. We came home, and I came up into my room and had to totally strip down and change all my clothes. That's how much sweat and it's just so frustrating. And obviously I would have seen it if I had my CGM on, because it would have been alerting me. And I was just depending on how I felt and pricking my finger. And I hadn't pricked my finger probably in an hour. And and then I felt terrible for the rest of the day. Like I don't know what
really
it
depletes
does
you.
to
Yeah.
your
It's really
physical
depleting.
body, but I was exhausted for the rest of the day. And even the next day, I felt crappy for most of the day. And I didn't sleep well because I was just paranoid.
Oh my God, totally. Yeah.
So that was my frustration. And not being able to refill. I have talked to the pharmacy to see if I can refill early, but they haven't approved it. So it's just been there.
So I will just tell you, you can, not to get my doctor voice, but
get your doctor.
Your insurance will not refill anything early. Like they will not do that because they have a particular amount that they will cover. So in those sort of situations, you really have to go back to the company and get them to replace it. And you could do that online. I just did that a week ago because I had one that fell off
And I've done
early.
that before, but it takes, they were going to say, you've tried to do this too many times.
Yeah, I would just still do it. Yeah, they're all doing quite well.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to.
They can send me an extra sensor.
They can send you an extra sensor. Yeah, because I think a lot of people get these tussles with their insurance company. And sometimes they'll give it to you a couple of days early, but the vast majority just will not because they cover 3 or they cover 2 a month and that's it. And you really have to go back to the company and get them. And I think the challenge for so many of us now is, and I think this is underappreciated, is by the medical system, is that we're so reliant on these things. They're lifesavers. Like you would have not, thank God nothing bad happened, but that sensor could have saved your life. And I see people all the time where the sensor saved their life. You know?
Yeah. I was in driving about to get on the bridge with a ton of car. That could have gone so bad.
You can't even think about that. Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah. So I'm so sorry that happened. That's really, I am so like, I cannot, I need my sensor.
Yeah.
I just feel so anxious without having that information and just that predictive. And just sleep is so scary.
Right. Going to sleep and not knowing. And so I still don't have a CGM. And I'm going to Savannah next week for a conference, leaving on Tuesday.
Oh my gosh.
And it's Friday. And I have messaged my doctor, but she hasn't gotten back to me. So what would you do? Call Dexcom?
So I would call Dexcom and tell them your situation. And sometimes they'll get it to you faster. The online one takes at least a week. So that won't get to you any faster. Yeah, so I would call Dexcom and tell them your situation and make a fuss. And then if your doctor has samples, I don't know if they do that sampling. Yeah.
Just to get me until my next refill.
Yeah. Oh my God, totally. Yeah. So I would probably either call or just show up there, honestly.
And then if I would pay, like if they would just sell me and not cover, like I don't know how much that would cost, but I would rather go and pay whatever it was to them so that I wasn't without.
Yeah.
And, we're even allowed to do that, are we?
I think they probably have to send in maybe a separate prescription. I don't know how that would work.
Yeah.
But you could be, you don't have to run it through insurance. You can pay for it out of pocket, but you do need a prescription for it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not easy. I just read or just got some sort of notification that actually Dexcom G7 is going to have an over-the-counter sensor.
Oh,
it's
really?
going to be available. Yeah, the Stello, I think it is. I think it's the G7. I don't know when it's just got FDA approved.
Because so many people without diabetes are using them. So
exactly.
It opens up a whole new market for them.
Yeah. So that maybe will make life a little bit easier if you just want to go buy one.
Yeah.
But,
I know.
Such a pain.
That was my biggest frustration of the week. But.
Yeah. And I had actually similar yet different. I was just talking to one of my friends at work who also has diabetes yesterday about pressure lows. I don't know if you ever get those where you roll over on your sensor if you lay on it or sleep on it. So it basically squeezes all the fluid out of your skin. And so it reads artificially low because there's no glucose there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're called pressure lows. And it tends to be more problematic for me in the first 24 hours. So so the night we have a new sensor, it's just often I sleep on it and then it's waking me up and it gets that low. And I know I'm not low. Low means like under 50. And I'm like, oh, definitely not that. And then I go and I calibrate. Anyway, and then you're up and you're calibrating and it's okay. Now I'm up.
Sometimes when I've calibrated, like sometimes if it's way off and I've calibrated, they'll reject it. and they, it's not accepting your calibration, which I'm like,
now what do I do? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So mine was just more about it's such a blessing to have these sensors and these devices. And oh my gosh, just sometimes the fragmented sleep with just the alerts and the beeps and the stuff is just really
And I constantly silence mine too, but it only allows you to silence it for 6 hours. I don't need the alert. Like I look at it often enough that I don't need it to be beeping at me.
The mine, it's reading like I'm super low, so it's not going to shut up. And I have the app on my phone, and that, oh my God, that siren alarm is so loud.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was my kind of, it's just a hard
I know.
thing. It's a hard thing.
Yeah. And I would love to know what's going on. And I don't know if you know this, but like, what's going on to the rest of my body when a low like that is happening? Why am I drenched in sweat? Why am I exhausted for 24 hours afterwards? What is all of that about? Is it because I'm getting older and these are just harder to, I don't know, to live through?
Yeah, it's definitely like a huge stress for your body. So there are all these counter-regulatory hormones that are just, I don't know if you've ever had just a severe stress or felt like you were going to faint or anything like that. A lot of those symptoms are the same with just the sweating and a lot of the other symptoms that come with it. So it's definitely like your body is in high stress.
Alert. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a whole cascade of hormones that are released in response to that.
Okay.
And often it leads to really high blood sugars later on for lots of reasons. But
I could not communicate with Reed. Like I was trying to explain to him what was going, because I couldn't, I just had to keep talking. And I said, it's like inside my head felt as if I was standing in like a schoolroom, a classroom right underneath the fire alarm. And the fire alarm is just going like this. And the fire alarm was just this basic saying sugar. It was like, that was the only, I could compute any other thought than that.
Yeah. And that's just brain hypoglycemia in that sort of situation. Your brain, your brain's just not getting enough sugar glucose to operate. Yeah. Super scary. But I do think that I do think as we get older, that hypoglycemia is just, it's very depleting.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a bad one.
Right.
Pretty,
which I haven't had one of those in a while, but.
Yeah.
And then it always brings up, I don't know how you manage this, but I was feeling particularly ragged the next day. And I had to go into the office and there was like a big, and I don't call out sick too often, but there was a big part of me that really just wanted to call out sick and stay in bed all day and recuperate.
Right.
But, and I know my job would be fine and they would get it, but I also hate, I didn't want to stay homesick and lie about why I was staying homesick. But I also didn't want to say it was because of my blood sugar, because I've always had, when I was first diagnosed, 14 years old, 1985, the head nurse at my boarding school, she was the only other person that on campus that had type 1. And she was like 60 or something. And I just remember her lecturing me one time after I had recently, when I came back to school and I was trying to get back into the flow of things. And she lectured me about don't ever use diabetes as a crutch. That was her phrasing, just making me feel very shamed about using it, quote unquote, as a crutch. That's the reality. I felt like shit. So I went to work, but I don't know. I just always had those conflicts.
Yeah, and I always think it's so interesting how those early years of diabetes have such an impact on our kind of approach and feelings about our kind of disease. And I think my perspective has evolved just over time, because I do think that we struggle with things that people who don't have diabetes don't have to struggle with. And so I think I fill out a lot of paperwork, FMLA stuff for people so that they have accommodations to deal with.
Oh, do you really?
These types of things. Oh, yeah. And I think a lot of it very appropriate. People asking for breaks and asking for being able to eat, and just think that some jobs may not have as much restriction about. But I think sometimes you have a bad low blood sugar and you just need some time to recover. And it's just the way it is.
I
think it is something probably interpersonally you have to navigate with,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
think it's just a reality that it's just different. I think all of us go through these times. I remember when I was younger feeling I'm never going to let my diabetes slow me down. I'm going to
Right.
do everything. And then over time, I've just realized that was a very youthful kind of approach. And now I have to let it slow me down because I can't go out and do that stuff because I got to deal with lows and highs and all this stuff,
Right.
wearing all this stuff and anything. I'm really sorry that happened. And I hope you are able to, I think so much of that was probably one of our other topics was just access to insulin. But I think so much about management these days with chronic disease, but especially with diabetes, is just accessing all your stuff because there's so many things that you need to have available to be safe, to travel, to do all this stuff. And there's just the complexity of navigating our healthcare system to get those things that you need.
And not
It's
even
just
that was like,
time-consuming.
another thing I was going to say was in the same 2-week period. And again, work has been really busy and really stressful. And so I've been distracted, but I dropped off Reed at school, drove to work, got there, was at my desk for maybe an hour and a half, and I could feel that my blood sugar was going up. So I reached over to prick my finger because that's all I had. And it was like 175. And so I went to do an extra small injection and I didn't have any syringes in my bag. I had no syringes.
Yeah.
Like that never happens to me. And it just goes to show, like the challenges are always there. It's not like
Totally.
it better with age, or with years of having diabetes. But the last thing I wanted to do was have to get back in my car and drive all the way home to get my syringes. And so that was, I was able to get a prescription called in and walk to the pharmacy but of course the pharmacy, they were like, oh, let me check and see if we have any of these syringes in stock. And I thought, just go easy for me. But I felt like an idiot too, again, because I didn't want to say that at work. I have to drive home because I forgot my syringes.
Well, it's easy for other people to think just tracking all that stuff and everything. And you can buy syringes over the counter. You don't need a prescription.
No, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. You can buy all that stuff. You can buy.
Really?
Yep. And if your pharmacist gives you a hard time about syringes, pen needles, all that stuff, obviously your insurance will pay for it, but you can buy that stuff over the counter. And you can always buy too.
Something to show. No. Oh, interesting. Nope. I did not know that.
Yeah. It's really good to know what you have access for because, again, so much of what we have to do these days is advocate for ourselves. But you can also buy, not that you would want to, in a pinch you might. You can buy NPH insulin over the counter. You can buy regular insulin over the counter.
Oh.
You need prescriptions, and this just seems silly. All the analog insulins like Humalog, aspirin, all that stuff you need a prescription for. But the other ones you can buy over the counter. And you do not need to run any of the insulin through your insurance. If you want to pay for it out of pocket, you can do that and use a good RX coupon or whatever.
Right.
It could potentially be expensive, although a lot of insulins now have programs that make it cheaper, and then it doesn't count towards your deductible. It's all this kind of stuff. But again, just being informed that way is really important because if you get into a pinch traveling or whatever, it's just good to know. Transfer your prescriptions to another Walgreens. You can walk in and just pay out of pocket and get reimbursed later.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, I did not know.
Yeah. There's just a lot of details to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like my brain can only hold on to so much at a time.
Yeah. And every time I go into the drugstore, I think, oh my gosh, that job is just so hard these days being a pharmacist.
Can you imagine? I feel like they are like flight attendants who just are just getting through their day, like where everybody that you are dealing with is angry, is upset with you. Like,
yeah.
And you can see that waiting in line at the pharmacy to pick up your prescription. Everybody there is ready to have to do battle. Right.
Yeah. And they're just the messenger.
Right.
So much for
they're
those
the
people.
Poor middle.
Yeah.
I do have empathy for them. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a hard job.
Any other diabetes related, like health stuff or?
I would say, yeah, for me lately, it's just been about sleep and disturbances and alerts and alarms and all of that kind of stuff. It's just been driving me crazy. It's got better. Once I get past the first 24 hours, it usually gets better. But the first day is always such a pain.
And that's thinking the first 24 hours when you have to change it like every however many days.
Yeah,
That's
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's worse than others. But yeah, I'm always, oh gosh, it's going to be one of those. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's a pain. But yeah, other than that, it's just the day-to-day stuff. Also getting ready for I don't know, for where you are, because you may not have as much season kind of variability, but for us, we're just with getting into spring and summer activity. And I think choices really change for people. Just they eat lighter, they're outside more. You probably
I
think
agree.
it's so hot there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So just getting ready for all of that stuff and trying to figure out. One of my things on my list today is I've got to sit down and look at my data on my pump and sensor just to get some idea of what my patterns are. I never do it. I do it intermittently, but it always really helps to just be like, oh yeah, this is what's happening. Because you look at it moment to moment, you just don't have a sense of what your patterns are. And there's usually something, I think, for today, diabetes wise.
I know. and that true. Just thinking about the whole diet and eating thing and just feeling so, I don't know about you, but I feel so high maintenance with and as I've been back in the whole dating world post-divorce. And so having to and most of what you do on dates is go out to dinner, right? Which not only is very expensive.
Oh my God.
But I feel like every time we're trying to pick a restaurant or go somewhere and order something to eat, and I know this is all internal, but I feel so high maintenance because not only do I have diabetes and so make choices about what I'm eating around that, but I'm vegetarian too. So it just makes me feel high maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had a work retreat this morning and a catered lunch it was like kind of Caribbean kind of food, just Jamaican Caribbean. And so it was a lot of like red rice and which I never do well with rice.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, yeah. So then I don't eat very much. And then people look at you like, why aren't you eating? And I don't know.
Yeah. And I said that to somebody last week that she was talking about being a foodie. And I just thought to myself, God, that would be hard to be a foodie and have diabetes. Yes. Or I mean, to be really I can appreciate people who are able to navigate that. But I think food for me has just become so functional. I'll eat that because it'll be easier, XYZ. Right. There's no real adventure in it because every time there's an adventure, there's all these consequences. That happened last night. We went to one of the arts and lectures thing. We saw Gabrielle. Oh, what's wrong? No,
yes. I won't be able to pronounce her name.
Zevin. Gabriella Zevin. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
It was great. Yeah, it was great. She was really dynamic and interesting. But my sister and I went out for dinner ahead of time. And it was just, I took too much and I got home and I was so full and it was like arrows going down. And I'm like, oh my God.
I know. The last thing you want is
so full.
Yeah.
What do I, it was such a bummer.
Oh, I hate that.
It was just so not worth it too. I wish I just hadn't eaten anything because it was like, it wasn't even that great.
And if you ate ahead of time, so I don't know that this happened, but if you're sitting there trying to pay attention to something, to some event, but you're also being aware of how you're feeling, and if you're feeling like you're going up. I know. I was looking at was it a podcast or something by a woman with type 1, and I forget if it was a YouTube video or podcast or what, but she was talking about switching from an Omnipod to some different kind of pump. And the numbers that she was talking about, I was like, oh my God. She was talking about her time and range just was like 90% with,
oh my God,
her high was like 150. Are you kidding me? That was my highest high. I would feel amazing all the time. It didn't. Yeah. Does that require a ton of work? It didn't seem very realistic to me.
Yeah, I think it all depends. Yeah, I think there are people that, especially if you're a YouTuber about your diabetes, I think you may have a little bit of a different sort of emphasis on you can't speak to that person. I think over 70% That's what we're going for. Like
Yeah.
I say to people all the time, no one's telling you need to be 100%. You
Right.
just need to be over 70%.
Well, and that's what made me frustrated too, because I feel like if people are listening to stories like this and hearing that can feel very
totally.
defeating. If you're thinking that's what I'm supposed to be doing, and that can feel maybe super motivating for some people, but I think also feel
a little hopeless. Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's perfect.
No, exactly. We're all together. So
We're all in it together. Yeah. Well, it's been awesome talking to you and reviewing all of
I
these
know. And who do we have?
ongoing.
Who do we have coming up? We have a couple new updates.
Yeah, we got a new couple. So I was just reminding myself, Brooke, I don't know if you've signed up for it, but Brooke Kassoff is going to be talking about diabetes Sangha, because they're doing a course starting later this month on meditation and diabetes that's going to be fabulous. So
Good.
I think we're doing that at some point in the next week. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's co-leading this retreat. And I would really encourage people to go look at the Diabetes Sangha website and sign up for the course, because I know there's still spots available. And it's a Sunday afternoon event for an hour. I think we're going to learn, and it's just going to be so great. Meditate.
And that's probably exactly something like that would be helpful to me, where it just
it's helpful to everybody. Yeah.
Managing anxiety and stuff like that with meditation and
Diabetes Strong. One of the people from Diabetes Strong is going to be speaking with us, and that'll be great.
Yes.
Yeah. And we would love any other ideas. Anyone listening today, if anyone has ideas or suggestions or thoughts,
please share them with us.
Share them, because we are always looking for ideas and suggestions.
Yeah, you could just message us on Instagram, which is just search for Embracing Diabetes on Instagram. I think that's
Yeah.
You should know that.
And I know exactly. And I think we have an email too, right? embracingdiabetes@gmail.com.
Yes, we do. Maybe we have a lot of emails in there that we've missed out on.
I looked a week or two ago. We're fine.
I'm sure we're fine. Yes. Well, good to catch up with you. And it's Friday, and hopefully you have some fun stuff planned over the weekend. I feel like March flew by. I can't believe that it's already April 5th, but it's going to continue to be busy for me for the next couple of months anyway. Good to see you, and we'll check back in another couple weeks. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Bye, Liz. Thank you for listening to this episode of Embracing Diabetes with your podcast hosts, Dr. Liz Stevens and myself, Amy Stockwell, and music by Noah Mortola. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and maybe felt inspired or informed or less alone or all of the above. Please follow Embracing Diabetes on all major podcast platforms and leave a comment, question, or review. Thanks again. We hope you'll come back for more.